Thank you very much, everyone. So I'm Dr. Luciana Blaha, and I'm a young millennial with 3 chronic health conditions, one of which is telling bad jokes. So work life can be quite tough sometimes, but it can also be fun. And I want to talk to you about that today. I'm not going to give you the ABCs, but the CCCs of handling the future workplace, if possible. Things have changed a bit from the 90s, but as a young millennial, I'm not that far off from Gen Z. We've seen transition from people in power, some who were more conservative, yet managed to bring down or contribute to bringing down totalitarianism and communism in Eastern Europe, to people who have worked towards more tolerance towards LGBTQ communities, but also less, and also more nationalism and technologically forward societies. We can get on a little bit with that by putting some AI-generated fashion like a Balenciaga jacket, and then get on. But there are some themes that we can take from one another, things that show us how millennials and Gen Z really can get along quite well. What a wonderful team we can be. We've grown up witnessing the beginning of the internet, starting to learn that our dreams can be broken, that reality can change from what we've been brought up to believe. We've also learned that we have to stick together for success, and that we can increase our self-education and take advantage of technology and what's out there to improve our knowledge and power. You have grown up in that already, and you can see how that can help you build the future towards entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur, focusing on the environment and thinking about a better society. We have some similar concerns, the environment not being the only one of them. In a study that was published this year by Deloitte, the things that drive us, and this is common to both our generations, are money, meaning, and well-being. When I've asked this question before, quite a few of the audience members related to it. Do you relate? Yeah? Excellent. Thank you for the affirmative answer. Now, we have to find this, and we can build a better society, arguably, by looking at it. And we're really helped by the fact that by 2030, we'll be 74% of the workforce. The workplace that we're looking at building today can really become a reality for us. And remember, we're in 2025 at the moment, so we're 5 years away from that. At the same time, though, when the results of this particular consulting research were published this year, over 23,000 in over 44 countries, these amounts of people were thinking about what we need to focus on next. What are the key things that are important to us? Well, we like making the most of technology, making the most of AI, automation, really making our lives more efficient. But we also think about the work-life balance and the well-being aspect of things. Empathy and leadership are more important to us than ever. Yet at the same time, the chains bear us down. When interviewing these more than 23,000 people in 44 countries, Deloitte found that most millennials and Gen Z worried about the future. We're still worried about the labor market, how our jobs will change, what this will mean for Generation Alpha already. Some of us are having children. More than half of us feel financially insecure, and we live paycheck to paycheck trying to make ends meet, even though a lot of us are investing more than ever before. Almost a half of us have felt happy over the past year, and I'm a glass half full kind of girl if you can't tell, but that's less than half. So what's contributing to these pressures? Well, I've identified some key themes here based on my own research and what I've been able to find online, and some of it is related to some things not quite budging in the workplace, whether it's related to productivity pressures, to how we take care of each other, how people are treated at work, whether it's all the pressures and distractions that we have from social media, war, economic downturn, recession, things like COVID. or whether it's us trying to manage it all. Cady et al. In 2024, so last year, were talking about this very useful concept. Now, this is the first C for crystallized intelligence. Crystallized intelligence really talks about how we really are still part of the paradigm of industrial thinking. Industrial thinking has really started with the Industrial Revolution, and now we're talking about Industry 5.0 with the advent of AI and automation, robotics becoming a larger part of our life. We can be more efficient, we can drive productivity, we can save time on tasks. Think about all the wonderful things we could do. However, our brains are therefore more enabled to produce more, repeat more, comply more, do more of the same thing. And what that creates is a brain configuration that excels in repetition and predictable tasks. Well, smells to me like automation. These are the exact types of tasks, the exact same type of work that we're looking to automate. And this is one of the key sources of our worries in relation to the labor market that we've highlighted earlier. Well, so what can we do? Researchers like Cady suggest that we can really capitalize on some of the characteristics that Gen Z and millennials, I hope, are really building on in terms of the empathy, the problem solving, the emotional well-being, the collaboration abilities. But these are not just ideas, abstract ideas or concepts. It's really worth thinking about them in terms of taking the time to go through emotional education, having the EQ element in our universities, in our colleges, in our self-education time, taking time to think about complex problem solving and accepting that sometimes there's no simple solution. There's no one clear answer to problems like climate change. All we can do is take one step at a time and work on it together. Collaboration is therefore not just about being a team player, it's about joint survival in the face of very serious challenges. So humans are here to stay. But what happens when all of that becomes too much? Climate change, war, recession, we've just talked about it, the financial pressures, the cost of living crisis that we see not just in the UK but in many parts of the world. Well, that brings a lot of information to our brain. So when we use technology to deal with this information, we're looking at really changing the paradigm a little bit. Now, cognitive load theory, which is the second C, tells us that we have limited working memory. If you will, we have limited RAM. So what this means for us is the more complex a task is that we work with, the newer it is, and the less knowledge we have about it, the more it's going to take a toll on our brain. When we're doing these creative things that require empathy and leadership, creation, being innovative, they take a higher cognitive load. The way in which the information is delivered to us and the distractions, the calls, the social media pings that we have coming towards us all the time can make it even more difficult. Lenovo had a quick look at critical thinking in millennials and Gen Z in 2022, and what they were looking at was the fact that almost 70% of these generations are exhausted because of the high cognitive load. In Germany, the United States, Japan, and the UK, the majority of people felt this, and it wasn't any better for people working in IT, who arguably had more prior knowledge of a lot of the technologies that were maybe being a source of stress. So how can we deal with this? Well, stimulate cognitive flexibility, play games, think about things from a different perspective, listen to people talking about things from a very different point of view. Allow change to become part of your life and don't become attached to static things. Become the change, if you will, learn, be a lifelong learner. But also minimize distractions, do one thing at a time. Otherwise, it takes us up to 10 minutes to recover from that and be able to focus on the next thing. And finally, use technology to change the paradigm. Use AI to re-explain things to you in a more summarized manner, then look at the source and see where it's coming from. And this is going to be linked to a point, the last C, that I'm touching on later. In the workplace, don't just build participatory communication by asking people what they think and not doing anything about it. Have a joint session where everyone contributes regardless of age, gender, health, experience. Think about expertise as a measure of creativity and ability to translate the subject knowledge into application, and not just a measure of how long someone's been in the workplace. And finally, think about the experience of that and reflect on it. Now, this image is not an AI-generated image. This child suffers from a disease called polio. Poliomyelitis triggers a response in the child's body where they have deformed limbs for the rest of their life, and this disease was eradicated in the 50s and 60s. What we found, however, was that in London in 2022, polio was shed in the sewage system as a result of a decrease in child vaccinations, and this was partly a result of misinformation and disinformation. So we need to discern. Now, discernment, aka critical thinking, is the ability to judge well. This helps us tell whether we should vaccinate our child or not. What is the evidence? Shall we read several medical sources? If we find something on social media, can we question the source of that information? And the good news is, it's not just something that is fixed. You can learn how to do this. Now, the longer definition there by Dwight tells us that it's a combination of skills and dispositions, discernment, choosing between different things. There are a number of barriers to this. I'm not going to go through each particular block that I've got there to describe for you, but those are examples of things like heuristic thinking, where we take shortcuts in order to make judgments without actually thinking things through. Like when we choose to satisfy our curiosity by taking the first source for granted that seems to answer our question. That's satisficing, for example. It's also found in ways where we put limits on how we understand the world. I will look at the world in a particular way because my friend said so. I really care and love about my friend, but, well, if all of this research done over the past 20 years contradicts that, it could be something that I might want to bring in a debate over coffee and tea. Maybe we can both have fun discussing about it. It also comes from taken for granted thinking and emotional thinking. What that means is that we react on impulse when we're intimidated. Now, these are 6 elements to help you with that. So we said it's skills and dispositions. The skills are analyzing, evaluating information, and interfering with it. The dispositions have to do a little bit more with your own motivation. So it's having an inclination, having that curiosity, building a tendency, perhaps working on a habit of questioning this information, and having the willingness in the first place to do so. We're not here to force you to do that, but it sure will help with the survival thinking. Now, the building blocks that I want to help you with today have to do with things that hopefully will be fun. Be curious, not compelled. Question what is happening around you, and I know you're doing that already, but question it, looking at the sources, and experiment with things. Open your mind to try things out. Decouple learning from your job security. If you have fun learning new things, playing with AI, creating apps, going to look at that robot, learning about the environment, sustainability, and not being afraid of not having a job as a result of that, you might find that that helps you in your work in ways you never imagined. And that's also for you managers. Don't fire your employees because they haven't completed the training. Think about how they can actually grow in their job by having exposure to new information. Sandbox experiments create a safe workplace environment where people can try things out without breaking the system. They might become a lot more creative, find new ways to put things in practice, and then you can start with small projects. Think about cases and problems. Cases are small, delineated areas where you can look at a problem under guidance, solve a similar problem that a competitor organization went through, for example, or that a smaller societal group has gone through, and look at how they solved it or the challenges they faced. then go to the complex problems and encourage people to come up with their own solution from their own life experience and creativity to have a more comprehensive answer to that. And then finally, the biggest sort of building block for me is play, reflect, and talk. Sure, we can make some bad jokes. We can learn a lot from how people react to them, and we have to talk about it. Think about the Pope in a Balenciaga jacket. Think about all the memes and all the things you find on social media. What do they tell us about what we want to focus on, what we want to see? Maybe we want to have more happiness in our lives so that we can really focus and get our mental energy back, release the cognitive load, so that we can then be creative and active in the workplace. Now picture this workplace. We are no longer burdened so much by everything going on around us. We can manage it. Life is tough, but we can keep going on. We have some creativity and fluidity is encouraged. We live better because we've paid attention to our well-being. And we're finding meaning because we're feeling more empowered, not pressured. What would the world look like? I want to leave you with one final thought. The can we critically think the future? It's not just a yes or no kind of question. Yes, we can do that. But I want to ask it of you as a commitment. Can we do that? Shall we do that? Thank you very much.